Welcome back. I think it was with some trepidation that I approached this conversation this morning because it is very highly charged. So I'm going to say trigger warning all around right now. We are dealing with a very grown-up conversation. We're going to kick off things this morning with a story that sparked some serious heat online. A wave of white Afrikaans farmers, and this is what we are seeing within the news, relocating to the United States. Videos, posts about their relocation obviously gone viral, setting up a flurry of commentary around race, around privilege, around fear, and the state of South Africa, and I suppose secondary, the state in America. But this conversation isn't just about farming families leaving the country. Clearly not. It's about what that decision represents, what the story actually is. Is this a case of people chasing better prospects abroad, or is it a sign of deeper tensions at home, or are we just being fed a load of nonsense? We are joined live in studio by columnist and data analyst Anthony Fish-Hodgson, Felicity Harrison, who is the head of Sustained Dialogues program at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, and familiar voice and Good Hope FM radio host Irma G, who must be terrified to talk, or really excited. You guys are giving me good positive energy, which I'm appreciating. So thank you so much for being here. Felicity, I'm going to start with you because, and I'm sorry to do this, but we need to frame this. If I was your boss, a slightly less intelligent version of your boss, and came to you and said, Felicity, what's going on? These stories have just broken. How have you been able to frame what is actually happening for your own operations?
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here, even if it is the middle of the night for me.
Yes, exactly.
I think that we need to be looking at the issues around white people in South Africa and how transformed or untransformed that we have become in the last 30 years. And part of that is, I think it's something that I heard from Professor Brian O'Connell once, and he said for white people, equality feels like loss. When you have had privilege, and the kind of privilege that white people have enjoyed in South Africa under apartheid and under colonialism, you find that you find that equality feels like persecution, it feels like victimization, when in actual fact it isn't. It's just about having a level playing field.
And I'm going to state this quite categorically, because I feel like when we introduce sensationalism and lies, when something is as complex as this, we belittle the lives that have been lost through that situation. And we are not in any way condoning violence against anyone. And what has happened to white Afrikaans farmers, as has what has happened to young black children within this country, within the same scourge of violence and a lack of justice, we understand that we need to tread very lightly. Anthony, is this why this has become such a trigger? Is this just the easiest way to create a media storm? Why has there been the reaction that we have had?
I mean, I think the main reason that there's such a strong reaction from so many South Africans is fundamentally that a lot of what's being said is just not true.
Yeah.
And so we've heard subsequently from our Minister of Justice that in the last 4 years, there have been just over 100 farmer dwellers being killed, mostly black, and just over 50 farm owners being killed, mostly white. That's in 4 years, right? And in South Africa, there's about 85 people being killed every day.
Exactly.
Right? So I think people understand that to call it a genocide, to say that you need refugees. I mean, we only need to look at our phones to see what genocide actually looks like. We look at Gaza today, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, honestly, there's a kind of absurdist and humorous response also, and as serious as an issue it is, a lot of people talking about the Great Sack. And
all we can do is take a step back and laugh, really.
Exactly, and so yes, of course, we don't like anyone being murdered, but really the people who are buying into this kind of narrative, it's minority of a minority of a minority. Even the vast majority of the people in that small white Afrikaner group who do feel aggrieved about the situation are not wanting to leave, are not saying we need to be refugees.
Their identity is here, their farmland is here, and I've grown up within farming families and understand the connection to land and what that ownership actually means. And I don't think there is a huge amount of space in America for other cultures, to be honest, to grow and flourish and be represented. I don't think what's being offered here is that opportunity.
Yeah.
How do you frame this on air when we ourselves as broadcasters are so triggered? And I speak on behalf of Afrikaans farmers, on anyone who has lost their life when the truth gets trampled over, because we take a step back from real solutions here when it's all just lies on the table. But in the media space, what has the reaction been like for you?
It's so difficult for me because I'm raising kids. And so you want better than what I had. I want better for them. And so when you try and go through this world and you try and do things seemingly the right way and try and have open dialogue, and you just get shut down by the obscurity of it all, the nonsensical facts that get thrown around, and facts we should say. I mean, it's really hurtful. But what I always do in my situation with my kids or in my life, I always say, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would you react? And I just want people to really open up and start wanting to have a good dialogue. If you cannot sit down next to somebody that you vehemently opposed to and actually have a conversation, where are we going to go to?
Well, we'll never move forward, yeah.
You know, and as a nation, we are so resilient. South Africans are amazing with everything that we've gone through. I believe we'll get through it one day, but to get our message heard, to say that, like, actually the facts aren't as you think they are or as you want them to be, to create this narrative for you. But actually, this is the facts. And the reality is we all struggle. You know, you all have known somebody who's lost a life in the last
or experienced
week or
violent
month, or
crime
exactly.
firsthand. It's kind of the South African narrative, yeah.
It is, but I mean, we want to look beyond that, and we want to reconcile. We want to open up the dialogue, and we want to have really good conversation. But it means that you need to get off your soapbox, and you need to pause the anger, and you need to actually be able to use your words.
And there have been very few critically thought words on the table here. And I think all of us are feeling triggered, certainly even the broadcasters, at the way that particular press conference was handled, where the truth didn't really seem to matter in that moment. And maybe this is the news landscape that we play in, but there was a reason why this has triggered us on this level. How damaging will this be moving forward for the work that needs to happen on the ground still here in South Africa? And where has this left the group of farmers that are finding themselves now in America? We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can please drop us a note. We're going to call it a safe place online, but we'd love for you to vent, to have your voice heard. So you can hit us up on any of our socials. Drop us a voice note. We'd love to hear from you this morning. We will continue.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back as we delve right back into a vitally important conversation. Why? Because it's triggered pretty much the whole world right now. Still with us in studio, wonderful panel helping us unpack why white Afrikaans farmers relocated to the United States has touched a nerve for all South Africans, well, I think a global nerve. Beyond just immigration, this moment opens a broader conversation about identity, about belonging, and what it means to stay or go in today's South Africa. Thank you so much for sticking around and continuing on this path. We forget that these are people, and I think when we do sensationalize something like this, you forget there is now a group of people sitting in another country that clearly had motivation to act on this. Are they all farmers, in your understanding? Is this a doctored PR campaign, which we have seen the US presidency use in other spaces over recent years? How are you feeling about the validity of what we are being told as an actual story?
I think that is one of the big questions of our time. How do we know if anything is true and anything is real? My understanding is that not all of the people who went over to the United States are indeed farmers. The US government is saying that they have been properly vetted, etc., and I have no reason to disagree with the US government. But I would question whether all of the people that went over are farmers. And I think that we as South Africans also need to recognize, in as much as many of our family and friends go overseas for whatever reason, that everybody has a right to leave South Africa. But what we want is the people who remain here to have shared values, to believe in the Constitution, and to want to actually be here to build a better country.
And that's the bottom line. We have to move forward with the country that we're in. We don't just get to take a step back and wash our hands. How is the world receiving this? Obviously, we are supercharged here in South Africa, and we kind of have an understanding, and that's part of the frustration, is because we feel like truth isn't being met in that sense. How is the world framing this? More of the Trump nonsense, or has this hit a nerve globally, do you think?
Well, this is the battle unfolding globally also about what's true and what's not. And I think, again, I mean, very quickly we saw our Minister of Police also come out and say in the last quarter there have only been 2 farm owners been killed. They've both been black. And so, where is the kind of urgent
What
so-called
world
white
do we
genocide?
live in that we are validating statements with that line?
And so look, there are some white Afrikaners who are aggrieved for whatever reason, but the story here is much more about the United States of America than it is about South Africa. It's about the Trump administration that wants to have a certain story about race, about people, about value, and where do we fit into that, right? They're trying to undo diversity, equity, inclusion, those kinds of programs. South Africa looks like an example that's a counter argument to their whole
we
ideology.
are the antithesis, and maybe that's why we are the ideal target.
So they've got a vested interest in trying to show right now that this is what happens when you have equality in a country. White people get hurt or something. I mean, it's nonsense. But really what I want to say is, as far as South Africa is concerned, it's a storm in a teacup, right? This is about America and their politics and their narrative and their dialogue. It's not really about the facts on the ground here.
Clearly.
We also have to say that South Africa is not all the way perfect, Anthony.
Of course.
Like, a lot of work needs to be done.
We're a
But
mess. We're a mess.
A
Let's
hot
just
mess.
own it, yeah.
But we have made some strides. And to have somebody sit there and try and undo that, like, I take offense to that. Seriously.
And so freshly into this journey, I think that's part of why we have taken so much ownership of this new South Africa, is because we are actively involved as conscious citizens in rebuilding. How do we make this a positive then? Because if people, South Africans, are asking the right questions, aren't having the wool pulled over their eyes, are thinking critically, this has got to be a good thing. This has got to show kind of a coming of age for ourselves. Can this be a positive?
Your mother always used to tell you the grass isn't green on the other side, right? But that's literally the thing. Every single country, every race, every person has a different scenario. And so for me, you have to look to that and go, okay, cool. So it's not going to be perfect to me when I get there, because there could be legitimate farmers in that. And then they go to a place where, and the interesting thing is scrolling through social media and going, do they know where they're going? Do they know that that's mostly black people that live there? And like, what do they really want
What have
in
they
the
been
States?
sold?
What have they been sold? So, it's kind of like this, but all we can do is just hope and work and keep the dialogue, the communication, the reconciliation, keep that conversation going and try and better ourselves regardless of who leaves, because you can't say somebody can't leave.
Well, should I stay or should I go now? I think this is, I've heard that song since I left school, man.
Yeah.
It's been there. It's bizarre, but I'm thinking about the notion of gentle parenting here. Okay, you can't sell yourself as being this kind of democracy, have this level of reconciliation without standing up to it. Is this that? Is this a moment for us to stand up for our past, for our present and our future? Do you feel like this could be a positive thing for South Africa moving forward? And I'm reaching here because I don't think this is going to die down in the next couple of weeks. But South Africans, we know how to find that way to build and grow and show resilience. How do you see this moving forward?
I think this is a very good opportunity for us to start having conversations that we haven't had over
For a
the
while,
last 30
yes.
years. The data that IJR has, we have a reconciliation barometer, and that shows that more than 80% of South Africans think that being South African is important, want their children to think that South Africa is important. And while they don't see us united now, only about 30% of us see that we're united now. The vast majority of all races actually believe that a united South Africa is possible. And this is people from different ages, different races, different genders, different rural, urban. And so most of South Africans, and I think that this is what we have to counter in the social media, that most South Africans do actually believe in South Africa, in our shared future, and in having a future where we can all come together.
Yeah, and it's not just about sustain. It's thrive now, and I think we've cottoned onto that. Moving forward, how do we frame this? How would you recommend we kind of broach this? Because it's not going to go away, and we're going to have to stand firm. How do we use this opportunity moving forward? Where do you see this going?
Look, I agree that we need to be having national conversations, and some of them are about land and identity and race. But once we start having those conversations, we need to also acknowledge that those conversations are mostly not about white Afrikaner farmers. they're mostly about the fact that in the city of Cape Town, it's been 30 years of no affordable and social housing being built in the city centre.
It's a socio-economic issue,
like,
yeah.
That's so, I mean, and actually, I mean, you know what really upset me about watching that conference is we take with golfers to show status, right?
Yeah.
But it's golf courses that we have in Rondebosch and Mowbray and Greenpoint, which are using all the land that we could use for housing
For low
people
cost,
to.
yeah.
So those conversations need to be happening. We mustn't just get distracted with what's happening at the periphery, at these niches. Even if there are aggrieved people who I agree we should take seriously, you know, when
Everyone
people,
needs that
yeah.
voice. Yeah. Nice, gentle parenting there. You led me to a conclusion. I myself have realized as we hold this mirror up, I think this knee-jerk reaction is because of exactly that, because it forces us to actually engage with these issues, actually engage with identity, actually
have an
engage
opinion.
with the wrongs and be opinionated. And when we're going to jump on a soapbox, now we have the opportunity to actually do it for our people, for our country, for equality that has not existed. So we have to take ownership of that, and that is always going to be a bitter pill to swallow. But just be very wary of the news, the headlines, the line that you are being fed. There are pros out there with very, very well-paid PR teams that are orchestrating something within media. Think critically, please.